We're going to talk about the wonderful world of DePin. How many people here, by a show of hands, know what the heck DePin is? Not a lot of hands going up. Well, we're going to hopefully change that this afternoon. So I have four wonderful panelists here who are all doing different things in the world of DePin. DePin, of course, is decentralized physical infrastructure. So this is really where a lot of the promise of blockchain from its early days sort of hits utility in tokens. And many VCs are now looking at this as being a huge driver of this next cycle. Pantera, for example, has written about it widely and has put a fair amount of money into its investments in this area. I'm going to have each panelist introduce themselves and say exactly what they're doing in the DePin environment and what chain they're on. Lisa.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Happy to be with Michael. And it's my third year in a row at Futurist, so I'm really excited to be on stage this year again. I'm with Secret Network, and we are a layer 1 built on the Cosmos SDK. We are doing trusted execution environment and confidential computing. So the way that we overlap with DePin is that our confidential computing is done through the hardware solution of the secure enclave of the SGX chip, so trusted execution environment. And we're actually a layer 1, we're providing opportunities for every blockchain to build secret or confidential data elements. So we act as a layer 2 for Ethereum, for example. Anyone can call our smart contracts and do confidential computing.
Hey everyone, so I'm Frank Mathis, one of the co-founders of Genesis Go, and we built Shadow Drive, which is a decentralized data storage and cloud compute platform. Ultimately, it's you talk about like the tech and kind of what it does all day long, but I think at the end of the day, people care about is what Shadow Drive is going to do for them, right? And our whole goal with what we built and kind of building our own custom data storage consensus mechanism is to effectively take the hundreds of billions of dollars that cloud, big tech, like cloud platforms like Google and AWS, they rake in and kind of suck into the void each year, and decentralize that. Ultimately, we're looking to see if we can't help individual operators capture their piece of that pie instead of it having to go to big tech CEOs and executives.
Hey everybody, Scott Siegel from the Helium Network, and Helium has been around since 2019, one of the older DePins in the space, and the Helium community has built the world's largest wireless network, whether centralized or decentralized. Over 1 million hotspots have been, hotspots are the Helium hardware deployed around the world, and if you think about the state of wireless, billions of dollars are spent every single year by large carriers like Rogers here in Canada, AT&T and Verizon in the US, Telefonica down in Mexico. And this top-down traditional model will not allow the world to get to a place of ubiquitous wireless coverage. So Helium was built to solve for that. Community-built wireless networks running IoT, smart sensor solutions, and as well, we expanded a couple years ago to build mobile and cellular networks as well, and can talk a little bit more about those use cases as we get into the conversation.
All right, and my name's Patrick. I'm one of the co-founders of Jackal Protocol, where we build decentralized storage as well, but our main goal is to actually deliver data storage cross-chain. So we built on the Cosmos SDK as an L1, and what we're working on right now is cross-chain compatibility. So blockchains are good at a lot of stuff. They're not great at storage. You can only fit so much data actually in the blocks and on chains. So we use IBC technology and Hyperlane and our own bridging technology to get over to EVM, get over to Solana, and provide value over there so people can build web-scale applications.
So I'm going to start from the general and go to the specifics, since each of you have very different sort of paths towards decentralized physical infrastructure. Is DePin, the next big thing, or is it like many other buzzwords before it, like nanotech and clean tech, one of these things that everybody talks about and nobody actually gets to scale? Obviously, Helium, you've already gotten to a pretty good scale, but what are the critical components of really getting DePin widely adopted?
Well, I was at Consensus in Austin, and every second booth had DePin on it. So I think it's a narrative. I think it's got some traction behind it. And actually yesterday I met someone from Masari, and they told me that they coined the term DePin. So it actually came from Masari, which I thought was pretty cool. To me, DePin has been the narrative over the last year or so, and it's definitely entrenched. Do people know what it is? Maybe not, but it's a cool buzzword. And people are like, okay, it's DePin, it must be a cool project. But really, the underlying thing about it is it's got some real use case. It has the ability to move blockchain forward into the real world, into mainstream. And especially if you add in confidential computing, because that's what we're doing, I think that makes it even more accessible to the standard Web 2 companies that haven't yet adopted Web 3 or blockchain because it's either too complicated, it doesn't solve their problem, or it's too public. Well, DePin, confidential computing, solves that problem, makes it usable today for mainstream people, mainstream industry.
So I guess one of the other big narratives of this cycle is RWA, real-world assets. I guess you could say DePin is real-world connectivity?
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to borrow that.
I would say DePin is inevitable and absolutely necessary. So if you think about utility networks of the world right now, so whether that's wireless or energy, compute, a lot of these things have constraints because of their current CapEx and OpEx models. These are all top-down systems that have been built to serve public goods, commercial goods, and these things don't scale. For human scale applications, it's not possible. So if we think about the idea of, what is DePin doing? You're coordinating, incentivizing work in the physical world. The idea that you can close the gap in the void where these traditional top-down networks leave behind municipalities, they leave behind communities. The idea that anybody has the agency and the ability and an incentive model to actually do this work and be rewarded for building these networks that they need for their businesses or for their cities. I think that it is absolutely, like, DePin is inevitable to me because it serves all these existing real world problems.
So I guess I would guess just to follow up on that, and then we can answer this here, it's a little bit of a battle of the top down and the bottom up. I mean, for your particular space, the ultimate top down is Starlink, right? I mean, they're top down to everything, but I guess how do you kind of compete against that ultimate top down from satellites? And then you were going to say something as a follow on.
Yeah, I mean, these things actually, and it's the misconception of, these things are necessarily at odds when they're very complementary. If Helium is last mile wireless coverage, Starlink is not going to necessarily be able to cover everybody. And again, it's a centralized model where they are going to deploy where there's density, where there's people that can afford that, where Starlink and Helium can work together. Traditional telco and Helium are already working together. So in the idea that instead of one entity thinking about return to their shareholders, how do communities, cities, small businesses have the agency and ability to help build these networks that benefits them, but also, again, is kind of shared with legacy telco or legacy energy or legacy storage. So
just to follow up on that, I don't think it's a question of really top down or bottom up. I think it's a question of capital efficiency, right? You have this unique ability to bootstrap your CapEx, right? So the capital expenditure for us, for example, we don't run any servers ourselves. You guys probably don't run very many.
Yeah, we don't own any towers. So.
Right, so capital efficiency is better than anything on the market. Usually these deep networks are competing in monopolies and duopolies, oligopolies kind of situations where you're able to jump those moats from a capital efficiency and capital expenditure bootstrapping. The other thing that's really beautiful is you can automate all your operational expenses, depending on how you build it. Right, so if you have your smart contract or your chain, you can actually bake in a lot of the roles that would traditionally be needed to fill into the actual protocol itself. So you remove all of these different barriers, you're able to hop moats. Now the question becomes, can you provide a product that has more value on the other side? Can you compete with those guys, and can you drum up the demand side? Because the supply side, from all the metrics that we're seeing, I'm sure you're familiar as well, it's not a supply side issue, it's more of a demand side issue because we're just so early right now.
So I just want to, because there's kind of one other aspect to this, right? Like, at the end of the day, DePin is only as inevitable as the value that participants in the network get from it, right? So, you think about, we talk a lot, you see a lot in like Web3 about like decentralized, software and how, users and communities can participate in, the profits and in the growth of that, decentralized software. And, when you look at that, it's shocking how much of that, though, is running on, AWS or Google Cloud. And, DePin really what it is it's an attempt to take one of the most centralized layers of the stack and decentralize that amongst the people such that now they're beginning to be able to participate in, the growth and the success of these models, right? Like, we talk about Starlink, as you look at it from like, physical structure, like top down, right? If you look at it from a business or control structure, it's very much, like all the power is concentrated in one place. And that also means, all of the revenue is concentrated in one place, all of the advancements concentrated in one place. And I think at the end of the day, if DePin solves that, DePin is inevitable. If DePin fails to solve that, DePin fizzles and dies.
There's just, you can think about, obviously, decentralization, building on blockchain rails, it comes with a bunch of feature sets as well, right? You think about cybersecurity posture, digital privacy posture, just resiliency, geo-redundancy, all these different things that we have by building on these rails that come as a byproduct on building blockchain technology as well, right? So inevitability, I think that it's there. The question is that just can we actually cross the moats and provide more value and reach like almost like a parity or a cloud parity or depending on what application you're building, can it reach parity with whatever currently in that market right now?
So is this sort of a next generation in Web3 of what Uber and Airbnb and other, quote, sharing economy giants started?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think Patrick made a great point. And this sharing economy, the decentralized economy, what if, so right now I heard this idea, every single household needs to buy their own lawnmower if they have a lawn. They use it once every week, once every 2 weeks. That's a lot of capital expenditure, right? So why should we all have our own lawnmower? Why can't we have the street has a lawnmower and you get it out, and definitely the more sharing economy than the decentralized. But the idea is good. I think it's a good model to think about why we don't all need to have our own servers and our own data centers or even our own cloud services. Why can't we share a little bit more on things that are only used, we only use a fraction of them.
Like TaskRabbit.
Yeah, like TaskRabbit. You don't need a whole person. You use the person part of the time. So I think Patrick made a really good point that DePin is about capital expenditure, investment in infrastructure that is maybe not necessary for everybody to have their own.
Well, I think the other thing to that, though, right, is like Uber took off. Uber became like highly successful. Not just because like you were able to share, in pieces of things that you don't use every day, or even that often, but because it worked well. It was fast. It was easy to use, and I think that's one of the biggest failings, in my opinion, of DePin right now, is there's a lot of DePin that kind of focuses on, and I'm just going to borrow your lawnmower analogy. A lot of DePin is basically us saying like, yeah, we've got this lawnmower that we built, but instead of round wheels, we put hexagonal wheels on it. So it's not as easy, it's not as not as efficient in a lot of ways, but here are some other ways that it is efficient. And I think one of the things about that DePin, I think we're slowly starting to see it do now, is more and more DePin projects are starting to look and say like, all right, what's our ticket to play? And the ticket to play is what's the baseline expectation of your user? Because if you don't meet those baseline expectations, users won't come, which means developers won't come, right? And so if you're building like in our case, like our kind of first principle for decentralized storage was that it needs to be like as fast as as secure, as stable, and perform every bit as well as a traditional Web 2 cloud service, because that's not something that you see very often, and that's been one of the biggest roadblocks of Web 3 decentralized data storage, is asking developers to go from super easy solutions super quick solutions to solutions that are much, much slower and less reliable purely because of the benefits of DePin. So I think that's something that, again, kind of like harkening back to the original question, we're going to start to see more and more inevitability with DePin as we start to see those, sort of like baseline expectations move from like nice to haves into a true ticket to play before you can even move forward.
I think, you talked about sharing economy. Like, one of the things that gets me very excited about this like subsector within crypto in general is like DePin is one of the biggest unlocks to growing the pie. Like, how do you onboard the next billion people into crypto? You have to abstract away a lot of the more technical components. You have to abstract away blockchain in such a way that like the economics just benefit that end user. So, if you think about a lot of some of these projects that are coming now, if you've got a Hive mapper dash cam, you're helping to create the next better version of Google Maps, you're earning for that, and all you need to do is just, it's very simple consumer hardware that's like in your car. You've also got a demo module that is giving, open, it's a metadata, driver metadata that could benefit insurance companies on an open network. By the way, both these things use Helium for connectivity, so that's why I'm shelling them out. But all these different products, it's very, like the UX matters so much in a lot of these different circumstances, and that's where, again, the crypto component is there to, is it micropayments? Is it a matter of how do you actually coordinate that work through the incentive model? But this is what's going to bring the next large wave of crypto users, because it's this physical world utility that has very often a very clear demand side from non-crypto users.
When you bring up a couple of good points, again, how to get the next billion users, a huge part is the GUI, right, the interface. Because the reason why the sharing economy took off so fast in Web 2 was you already built a lot of the infrastructure. You had an app store. You had, you said, hey, you want to go and make some extra money, and so that was the other part of your thing. If $1's laying on the table, someone's going to pick it up, unless it takes $5 effort to do, right? And so for you to become a driver at Uber, for you to go stay in or become a host at Airbnb, not a lot of effort. Click, 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 put a credit card in, put a bank account to get things. Whereas, the only real expansion into Web3 that seemed fairly seamless and was non-US was Axie Infinity, because you could make more playing video games than driving a cab in the Philippines. And so we had, when it becomes as easy to go in and say, I can make $10 a month using Helium, and I can make X amount a month with my storage on Shadow to be able to do this, and it's click, click, click instead of, okay, first take your wallet, then go and put it on MetaMask, and then it's a 3-day course afterwards. So where are each of you in terms of making the interface to your Web3 solutions look more like Web 2, or at least a path toward that?
Well, I think at the end of the day, your end user shouldn't know that they're interacting with Web3. Like, when I go, you talk about, I go, book an Airbnb, book an Uber. I have no idea what's going on the back end, and I don't care. I just need it to work, right? I need it to work. I need it to be easy, and so that's been like, for us, and I know for my colleagues here on stage, like that's been a very big focus, right? Is like we're infrastructure, we're laying the foundational layers for amazing developers to come in and build the next Uber or the next Airbnb, and basically making sure that they have the tools that they need to completely abstract away the blockchain. I think in previous years where DePin projects failed, or like in previous years when DePin was kind of struggling to become a little more of a trending buzzword, it's because there wasn't that focus on like, okay, let's make sure that they don't have to worry about any type of roadblocks when it comes to using the product, and make sure the developers don't feel like it's all on them to try to figure this out. And so I think it boils down to supporting the developers and making sure that they have the tools that they need to completely remove the Web3 elements from their user interfaces.
So, Scott, I know you've been in this 5 years now, so what have you seen in terms of how the ecosystem has developed from the initial concept that sounded crazy to a lot of people, and what Helium does to where you are now? I know you went from your own blockchain to now working on Solana, and how's that evolution?
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey. So we launched in 2019. Helium was not a blockchain project from its inception. The project itself, which predates me, like it's 10 years old. It was all around how do you solve for better connectivity for Internet of Things devices. So, think about sensors of, I want to track air quality, I want to manage supply chain of, I've got vaccines being, where are they? What's the temperature on the truck? Solving with those networks, it's always been hard to build. Again, CapEx, OpEx problem. And the idea of a community-built network was much more economically feasible. So, start with that. We built our own LO1, which we actually ended up killing to move to Solana because hardware is difficult, blockchains are difficult, building a wireless network is difficult. Let's just do one of those now. Fast forward to today, our IoT network thriving with over 100 organizations using it. There are major municipalities that use Helium as a connectivity layer for flood detection, air quality. There's a city that was using it for smart manhole covers to know when there's like a hole in the road to go manage that instead of sending somebody else out. Better use of resources in public and private sector. On the cellular and mobile sides, you talked about UX. People go and sign up for a Helium mobile cell phone plan. You don't have to know that much about it other than the fact of, I'm going to save 5x on my cell phone plan using this thing. And on top of that, of just cost savings, if you opt in to share your data and where you are to help better map the network and better deploy the supply side, you're rewarded for that. What cell phone carrier rewards its subscribers for helping to build their network and where privacy comes first? Like, it is just such a flip of the equation. So think about that ease of UX and how simple that is. And that's only part of the story. The bigger story for Helium right now is not even just the direct consumer side, which again, over I think 100,000 subscriber signups in the last few months. It's legacy major telcos where we need to close the digital divide, who are now roaming into the Helium network where you don't have to see it, you don't have to know about it. And I think we're 5.5 terabytes of data in the last 30 days running through the Helium network. That's real utility for traditional enterprise legacy that is being built by a community incentivized network. That to me is where DePin is thriving and succeeding, and this is happening beyond wireless into all these other spaces. So I think it's a great, great space in crypto that's unlocking a lot of growth.
You mentioned privacy as part of that, and so I'm going to ask Lisa about sort of some of the things you're doing with confidential computing, and in particular, you're one of the pioneers of moving DePin, or combining rather DePin with decentralized AI.
Yeah, so I think confidential AI is a huge topic here, and DePin makes it possible. And I know it's a little bit of a jump, but let me bring you with me. So right now, AI is broken. We don't have any confidentiality in what we train, the data we use to train it, or the prompts we use to ask to get the information out. It's all very public, and we don't have any protection. Now you take that to Web3, decentralized AI is even worse, because now not only do you not have privacy from the LLMs and their manufacturers, you don't have privacy from anybody. All your data that goes into the AI is now perfectly transparent and public to everybody. So adding in confidential computing to the DePin narrative makes confidential AI now possible and secure, and it's really, to me, it's the future. DePin is the underpinning for confidential AI. You need the new hardware, like the NVIDIA H100 GPU is necessary to do any sort of on-chain decentralized AI. But it's possible, and it's coming, and that, to me, is the exciting narrative for DePin in general.
So, Patrick, you're doing some interesting things with cybersecurity in DePin. Can you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah. Well, let's look at the beautiful thing about DePin is the value proposition is very clear, right? It's not we're not trying to get people to gamble on perps or buy NFTs, right? It's the value proposition is very clear for everyone that we're going after. So for us, for example, we have two different industries where it's weird. We have the Web3 developer. What they want decentralization, self-custody, all of that kind of nature, and being able to integrate it with their smart contracts for automation. They don't want API spaghetti in the background. They just want on-chain access to storage. You want to build a web scale application, you need storage, you need compute. Blockchains can't do compute very well, so they need someone to provide the storage there. When we look at our Web2 businesses that we're working with, so we have a telecom that's backing up to Jackal. they don't care about decentralization. They don't want self-custody. They want to sue us if we lose all their data, of course, right? So their value proposition specifically is they get multi-region geo-distributed storage that is 200% cheaper than anything else on the market because of our capital efficiency gains. So the Web3 developers, they like the privacy, self-custody, decentralization. The Web2 individuals, they like geo-distributed nature that's verifiable. And by building that into our chain directly and having custom modules and all that programmability, we're able to provide value in different ways for different people. So it's a little bit of a difficult answer because we have two very different markets that are very strange.
Okay. So we've got 4 minutes left and 4 people to speak. So I'm going to ask each of you to spend 1 minute or less on where DePin is going to be in 5 years. That's one halving plus a year. And what you're going to be doing to sort of contribute to that growth. We'll start with you again.
Starting with me?
This way, yeah.
All right, bring it on back. So right now where we are is we want to be accessible on every blockchain for the Web3 developers with a simple smart contract call. That's important to us. So building our bridging technology, we wrapped all our blockchain modules in smart contracts, and now we're deploying them on other chains. So we're starting with Cosmos, and then we just got EVM working last week, so we're excited about that. And then Solana, of course, as well. The thing that I'm really excited about is just kind of getting the demand side working and reaching parity. So just making sure that everything's equally as fast. We'll be a little bit slower because of end-to-end encryption, but that's the best that we can do. So we can't beat physics, unfortunately, but we're excited to get closer to cloud parity.
Okay. Scott, 5 years in, 5 years to come.
Yeah, I think that kind of echoing what I was saying earlier, when I think about traditional utility networks, again, wireless, energy, kind of edge compute, a lot of these different things, we're not going to get there with the way the legacy models are, CapEx, OpEx constraints. In order to really close the gap on these things, you have to have the ability for community-built networks to be able to create these networks that are incentivized where a flywheel is economically feasible. And I think you're going to see significant value accrual and value created in these networks. Whether that is through the legacy incumbents, through those new challengers that are going to be able to run on these networks, I think you'll see a lot of value created through DePin. And I think that one of the things we're already seeing from Helium is, especially for the teams that we work with as a connectivity layer, everybody's starting to face some of these similar issues. Again, like you can't run that much storage on chain. There's a lot of compute. There's a lot of requirements for these DePin applications where you don't want to create too much blockchain load. There are tools that can be built for better horizontal scaling. Not to mention, I'd say, like, there's a composability element. One piece of hardware, one physical location can do more things. So if somebody's out there providing wireless coverage, can they also be connecting into solar panels to help contribute to a grid? Can they also be doing edge compute without that same? So is there composability out of the hardware, the physical location? Helium's built a huge social coordination layer of hundreds of thousands of people. Let's use that to build more utility. So I think that DePin composability in general, I think you're going to see more of a story out of that as well in the next 5 years while value continues to accrue to these networks.
Okay, Frank, where's decentralized storage going to be in 5 years?
So I think 5 years from now, what we'll be in is the middle of a regulatory battle. I think there is, there's always a lag, right, with regulation and technology. Right now, regulation is very much focused on centralized technologies and how to protect users, how to make sure those centralized entities are doing what they should be doing, and yada yada. DePin is not on the radar for regulators at this time, right? And you can definitely bet that as more and more DePin projects start to battle, take away market share, achieve the goals that they're laying out, to spread wealth to the end user, spread wealth to network operators, reduce expenses till they're a fraction of a penny. All of those things are going to catch the eye of big tech, and big tech is going to they're going to bite back. And so I think there's going to be an onus on us as participants in the DePin space to be very proactive over the next 5 years with engaging regulatory bodies, so that way we don't end up in the place that we ended up with crypto tokens and the SEC, right? We kind of waited for them to come to us, And over the next 5 years, I think DePin's success or failure is going to depend largely on our ability to proactively reach out to regulators, the world over, and explain to them like, okay, what is DePin? How is it different? Why do certain things apply versus not apply? And why is this actually going to be a force for good in the world, as opposed to what will inevitably be painted as like just a bunch of random people, all kind of wanting to create anarchy together, who don't really care about the global order of things. And I think that's going to be like the focus, I think, over the next 5 years.
Lisa, bring us home. Where's confidential AI and decentralized AI in 5 years?
Well, I have sad news, I'm afraid. I think that in 5 years, we're not going to be having blockchain conferences anymore, because blockchain will just be so integrated in everything. DePin will be integrated into everything. It'll just be technology. But I have to say, Tracy and Meyer, Futurist, has been such a great conference over the past few years, and Tracy and Meyer are going to take this conference and make it the Futurist conference. It just won't be the blockchain Futurist conference anymore. It'll be the Futurist for the next thing that's coming. Maybe it'll be confidential AI. So I can't wait for 5 years from now to be here on this stage and see what we're talking about
Or
then.
in Miami.
Or in Miami.
Thank you, panelists. It was a great panel, and that's it for now. Come back in 5 years.